Our story is from I Am Herding Cats. I'm a team builder. A few years ago, I was sitting in a job interview, and the hiring manager asked, "What do you consider the greatest accomplishment of your career?" This gave me pause, as I've been doing the same thing for over 25 years. I let the mists of memory transport me back in time. Dorian, the nurse manager. Kip, the program manager. Dr. Steve, the clinical director. Yes, I had 3 bosses. I started on the unit as an already seasoned, jaded RN, and soon discovered that most staff who worked there were very, very young and inexperienced. For many, this was their first real job. They assumed all the weird stuff that happened every day was just normal for the workplace. Dorian had decreed that no one was allowed to write incident reports for med errors or safety issues because it makes me look bad in safety huddle. Non-clinical staff allowed to pass meds, schedule changes without notice. Additionally, the department was easily the most toxic I've ever worked in, with various cliques at constant war with one another. I could go on and on. The troubles began one day when I opened my email to a message from Dorian which stated very curtly that I was being investigated for an incident which had happened on the unit, that I was to meet with HR to discuss it, and for possibly disciplinary action. I was not to discuss the incident with anyone. No date was given, no medical record number, no indication what the issue could be. I replied that I would need the above information, would speak with my union rep, and meet at a time convenient for me. Dorian declined to give information. I declined to meet with him. I began receiving emails almost daily, each more threatening than the last. I printed them all, contacted my sister, the employment attorney, tried not to start shaking whenever I had to check my email. I was keenly aware that this is intimidation 101, but it is remarkably effective even when you know that. Because I'm not a direction follower, I was soon discussing this in the break room, and before I knew it had been approached by 3 other women who had all received the same email on the same day. Comparison showed the emails being sent about a minute apart. We did not work the same shifts nor the same days. We agreed to call in the union rep and refused to meet with HR. Dorian continued to escalate, including cornering us in the hall, stepping in chest to chest, and trying to stare us down. He was a very big guy. Before long, we were speaking to more and more women, and it came to light that Dorian had a habit of targeting them with this exact email, followed by others that were more and more threatening until the person would finally meet with HR, get written up for something vague, and then be forced to sign a non-disclosure, no retaliation agreement. It seemed that he had simply picked the wrong 4 women this time because we were not having it. I can't tell you how much time at work began to be spent with people crying while recounting their stories. None had thought to call in the union rep. They did not even know their Weingarten rights. We began to plot. We had limited time, and our company has a long and unglamorous history of protecting people like this. Before long, the entire team was united against the common enemy. LGBTQ staff wrote up statements, backed with witnesses, of grossly homophobic comments, often in the presence of patients. Staff who were immigrants made statements about racial slurs. A staff who was incredibly petty and vindictive had been compiling a dossier on every perceived policy violation and wrongdoing on Dorian's part since his hiring date, and he prepped it for presentation to HR. The graveyard shift, all huge men, said, "Obviously, Dorian isn't trying to flex on us, but we want to help." So they spent a couple nights cruising Dorian's social media posts and capturing screenshots of homo, trans, xenophobic, and misogynistic content. Worried that they hadn't done enough, the night staff paid for a cheap background check, and what a score. DUI, failure to appear, hit and run, domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon. Did the company not do a background check? WTF? Finally, 2 women came forward with complaints of sexual harassment. One incident had even occurred in the presence of the assistant manager, and one was documented in an email. We were ready. We flooded HR with meeting requests, and our union rep coordinated the assault so that on Monday we met for simple harassment and intimation. I met first, and HR seemed unimpressed by my complaint. Tuesday, all LGBTQ and staff subjected to racial slurs made their formal complaints. They said that the HR lady looked tired. Wednesday started with the background check, moved into the minutiae of policy violation, and culminated with well-documented quid pro quo sexual harassment. The union rep informed HR that the union's attorney was eager to know how to proceed. HR assured her that would not be necessary. That evening, Dorian posted a sign on his office door saying he would be away for a few days and to contact Kip or Dr. Steve if we needed anything. Graveyard Shift reported that over the weekend, housekeeping came and removed everything from his office except his name tag, which the night staff took as a trophy. On Monday at shift, Change the CNO, COO, and HR met with the team and informed us that effective immediately, Dorian was no longer employed by the hospital. We all sat silently and politely until they exited the unit, when a loud and spontaneous cheer went up. People were hugging each other and cry-laughing. High fives all around. Aftermath. To the best of my knowledge, Dorian never worked as an RN again. Frankly, I don't care. Kip was fired 3 days later for having been aware of all that was going on and turning a blind eye, and because apparently he'd been touching women on the unit for a couple years. I hadn't been aware of that, but it came out in the HR meetings. Dr. Steve was also fired for sexual harassment. The unit hired an old manager of mine who had a long and well-documented history of, you guessed it, sexual harassment. I quit within days of him being offered the job. The department's foray into getting along crumbled. Most of the staff have moved on to other jobs where they seem much happier. What do you consider the greatest accomplishment of your career? I sat up straight, smiled, and said, I took a very fractured team and brought them together to achieve a common goal. I like to think I'm really good at team building. It was truly an epic revenge on the toxic manager who had been harassing and intimidating staff for years. Not only was he toxic, but he was also racist, homophobic, misogynistic, sexist, and had a criminal background. OP and his friends strategically overwhelmed HR with a series of formal complaints against the manager, which ultimately led to his removal. It was very satisfying to read this story. The next story is from MU Funny 7588. My sister doesn't want to free her live-in unpaid maid, so I got her fired. Obligatory backstory. Many of you have probably heard of families with strong hierarchy structure, normally with the eldest in the family having the most influence. My family is one of them, except that my parents are drug addicts deadbeats, so my eldest sister, 31F, our entitled mother, raised all 5 of us. She is the boss of the family. She says, jump. Everyone says, how high? The focal point of the story is my youngest sister, 20th, who I'll call Little Sister. Most of us have a handful or at least a couple of memories with our mother before she lost her shit, except for Little Sister. For her, entitled mother is the only mum she ever had, and entitled mother knows how to take advantage of that. All of us noped out of our parents' house as soon as we turned 18, except for entitled mother, who waited until Little Sister and our brother were raised and in their mid-teens to move across the country, and soon found jobs and accommodations for all of us to move to the same state as her. Little Sister begged for years to move in with her, but entitled mother always denied, saying that somebody had to take care of our father, and because she and her new husband needed privacy and space. That was until entitled mother got pregnant. She got Little Sister to move in with her, and she has been there for the past 2.5 years, helping out. Now, to the story. Entitled father's family wanted to visit for a couple of weeks, so Little Sister had to stay with me for that time so that they could use her room. It's worth noting that entitled mother didn't ask or let me know about it. She just dropped Little Sister off. One day, she saw me studying for my master's degree and said something about how she always wanted to go to college. And this is how it went. Me. So why don't you? Little sister. Oh, I talked to entitled mother about it, but she said not everyone is the college type, and that I wouldn't have time to work, study, and take care of niece at the same time. And it's expensive. Me. Most people work and study, and at the same time, and she can put niece in a daycare. I'm sure it wouldn't be that much more expensive than what she's already paying you. Little sister. She doesn't pay me. She already gives me food and shelter, and if I need money, I just take a shift at work. And this is how I learned my sister was not only babysitting, but also cleaning the whole house for free every day. She was even only working 8 hours a week at her normal job because she was too busy taking care of our niece. Long story short, it took me weeks to convince her to apply to community college, and then more weeks on the actual process, but she finally got confirmation she would start in September. All of that behind entitled mother's back. She was planning on telling everyone the next time we all got together, which would be Independence Day. But before that could happen, entitled mother got everyone together at her house to announce that she was pregnant. Little sister starts crying because now she wouldn't be allowed to go to college. Entitled mother gets deeply hurt and offended that she planned this behind her back. I butt in. Our other siblings butt in. It's just generally a mess. How could you do this to me? Who's going to take care of the babies? I can't believe you'd be so selfish. If you like OP so much, go stay with her. These were all some of the things she said. She kicked me and little sister out, who stayed with me until they made peace. Both of our siblings reached out, one to say that I should have minded my own business, and other to tell me she was on my side but wouldn't say anything. After that, little sister moved back with her and didn't go to college. But they agreed she would get paid $6 an hour and be allowed to take more shifts at her job until the baby is born, and then go to real college after the child turns 1 year old. I know it's messed up, but all of them, especially little sister, worship entitled mother like a god. I waited a year to act on my revenge, making sure my sister had saved enough money to live on her own. The revenge. First, what I did was research the legality of paying a homeless person in food and shelter. In the US, and depending on the state, it's legal as long as you do not cross the line and the person becomes an employee. For example, you can give the person a list of tasks you want done. However, you cannot say that it has to be done in a certain amount of time. You also cannot request someone to be somewhere at a certain time. You can ask, but not demand on the time. It comes down to a choice of words. Also, you have to comply with rental laws. If your local laws say that you must give 30 days notice to a tenant, then you must give 30 days notice to this person as well. I had proof of all of the situation. Several screenshots of entitled mother admitting not paying and not allowing little sister to move out, get a job, and also admitting to kicking her out whenever she wanted. All this technicality seemed worthless since no one would sue her. But that didn't matter. I just wanted to make sure that her boss knew that if she were to be sued, it would be a sure case. Entitled, Mother works for a civil rights attorney's office, so discovering she has a literal modern-day slave would probably get her fired. I could have just created a burner email and sent it all to her boss, but then they would explain to her why she's getting fired, and that would get me and little sister in trouble. So what did I do? Entitled, Mother was always complaining about one of the bosses on her job that hated her and had tried to get her fired for ages. I went to the company site, found the woman. Thankfully, she was the only Ashley that worked there. Found her on Instagram and Facebook. There she had a post tagging her yoga studio. Went to said studio and created my membership. It took a few weeks of trial and error trying to find exactly what class Ashley belonged to, but I finally found her. Then I went to yoga class every Tuesday and Friday at 8 a.m. for months, slowly building a friendship with her. Around 3 months in, she asked to follow me on Instagram, and I was already prepared for this scenario, having deleted the few pictures I had with entitled mother. After 9 months, when our friendship was a strong baby, I brought up the crazy coincidence that I found out she worked with entitled mother. Before things could get awkward, I said, "It's ironic that she works for civil rights, considering, everything." That got Ashley's attention. I told her everything, showed every screenshot. I could practically see her eyes shining. They had their own history that is not important to the story. All you need to know is, entitled mother is a bitch. Ashley wants revenge as much as I do. I told her about little sister situation and why entitled mother couldn't ever know about this. This is why being friends with Ashley was so important. If I had just sent them the proof and explained the situation, they would have probably just ignored it, since this was a very legitimate reason to fire her, and they wouldn't risk firing her for a minor mistake and maybe getting sued. I sent her the files with her promise that entitled mother wouldn't hear about this, but she needed it to convince the other owner, who was the reason why she wasn't fired yet. 2 months later, entitled mother was fired for minor mistakes, lateness, and general bad productivity. Small victory, sure, but I loved coming to visit her during the 4 months she was unemployed. She was looking so tired and miserable all the time since she had no money to pay for a babysitter, and little sister is away at college, so she actually had to take care of her children. Moral of the story: check on your siblings. They might be living in a modern slavery arrangement. The revenge was perfect and strategically planned. After discovering her little sister was being exploited as an unpaid maid, OP befriended her entitled sister's boss, Ashley, at a yoga studio. After months of building trust, she revealed proof of the exploitation, giving Ashley all the ammunition needed. Entitled mother was fired for minor mistakes and bad productivity, leaving her miserable and without help. Meanwhile, little sister was able to escape and go to college. It was really satisfying. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.